Hello, everybody. Welcome to Medicine and Science, only on the Pod TV network. My name's Nick Pallavita. I'll be your moderator for today's show. And today we're going to be discussing medicine and politics, our third part in this particular series. It's very important to understand that there's a lot of people, especially on social media, who are not experts discussing and opining on medical procedures. And as a practicing attorney, I have been licensed for 42 years, a member of the Florida Bar, and I've had to certify experts in court. I can tell you these people I could not certify as an expert on medical procedures in court because they have no background. Yet they're up talking on LinkedIn as if they're the world's leading authorities. However, there is somebody I could actually certify as an expert who'll be on this show, who you've seen before, Dr. Michael Patmos, who's actually board certified in internal medicine. We're going to bring him on board to listen to his opinion as opposed to the opinions of the purported experts. So, Dr. Michael Patmos, let's see if we can bring you in here. There we go. I'd rather listen to your opinion as an expert as opposed to these people have zero background as an expert. But what is going on today in medicine and politics in the United States of America?
Well, this is very timely, and I have some very important news to share with everyone today. Thank you for the privilege of being on this program. For those of you who don't know, my name is Michael Patmos. I'm a board-certified internal medicine physician. I also have added qualifications in infection control. And what I want to talk about today is something that I saw just about half an hour ago when I saw my email inbox from a Substack called Your Local Epidemiologist, is published by Dr. Caitlin Yedalina and her team. Well, there was a editorial this morning from Your Local Epidemiologist. By the way, Dr. Yedalina is considered one of the most important and influential epidemiologists in the country. Anyhow, her Substack this morning was all about a new proposed rule that was just published by the Office of Management and Budget, and that rule is it's in a proposed stage. They're accepting public comments until July 13th, and then they'll decide whether or not to implement the rule. But I have to talk about this OMB proposed rule this morning because it couldn't be more important. And nothing I'm telling you is an overstatement. This OMB rule, if implemented as written, is the final kill shot for science and medicine in the United States. You know, since Trump has been in office the second time, we've seen a series of attacks on CDC and FDA and NIH, et cetera. For example, through Trump and Kennedy, all the experts at the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices were fired, and they were replaced by unqualified people who made ridiculous recommendations. Well, the federal court intervened and threw out those recommendations and said that committee the ACIP is composed of people who are, the words of the court were unqualified, distinctly unqualified. And that included the vice chairman, Dr. Robert Malone, who the court found after reviewing his credentials lacks qualifications and experience to opine on vaccination. Well, that was the government's, Trump's attempt to, in a small way, to just take over, it's not so small, to take over CDC. Well, this proposed rule coming out this morning from OMB is much bigger than that. It's the final cut, the final kill shot. Science has been under attack now with a series of sublethal stab wounds. This is the final stab wound. This is the stab wound right through the heart that ends independent science and medical research in the United States. And why do I say that? Well, first, let me explain to you how medical research, gets funded. Let's say you just graduated medical school with an MD and a PhD. I just attended my medical school's graduation as an alumni, and it was really inspiring to watch these young physicians, get their diploma. And many of them have PhDs, and they're going to go on to careers in research. So they would propose in a very intensified and rigorous process and submit a grant proposal to the NIH. The NIH would then have panel of experts in that field who would scrutinize the proposal, look for flaws and problems with the design, and either accept or reject it. And only about 3% or so of proposals are accepted. It's a very competitive process. But then the NIH would fund that research, guaranteed funding for a period of time to fund that research. And medical schools, many medical schools have very large budgets that come from the NIH. Some medical schools are more research intensive than others. My alma mater, the University of Nevada School of Medicine in Reno, is very research intensive. It's a massive research enterprise, and a lot of funding for that medical school, and it comes through its research funding. Well, that whole process would now be changed under this proposed rule. What would happen is that no longer would a grant be submitted to the NIH and then reviewed by a panel of experts. It would be submitted, and a bureaucrat would make a determination about whether or not that research would be funded based upon, and it's right in the OMB proposed rule, based upon whether or not it aligns with the president's priorities and his executive orders. So, for example, if there's some research that has anything to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, it doesn't meet with the president's priorities, it doesn't get funded. But this would pertain to all science and medicine research in the United States, would have to align with the president's priorities, and the decision, the up or down decision, isn't made anymore by a panel of scientific experts. It's made by a political appointee. This is the final takeover of the medical and scientific process in the United States. This rule, if passed as written, would allow OMB to not only decide who gets funded or not funded based upon their alignment with the president, but they could also cancel the funding. So let's say a 10-year trial of a cancer treatment ongoing, patients have been enrolled and getting this, clinical trial, and then suddenly the OMB decides, the federal government decides, we don't. It doesn't align with the president's priorities. Boom, cancel it. All that research is done. This is such an enormous threat to medicine and science in the United States. I can't overstate how significant it is. I think it puts the entire thing under the thumb of a politician and their political appointees. Now, you think that's bad enough? It's worse than that. This doesn't just cover medical research and scientific research and biomedical research. This OMB rule covers all federal agencies that issue grants. So the Department of Agriculture, the Space Administration, NOAA, every national observation, was it the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, all federal agencies, all departments of the federal government, anywhere in the federal government where a grant is given, that process now would be under the authority of a political appointee appointed by the president of the United States. So whatever the current president's philosophy is, that's what gets funded. It's really the end of all independent research in the United States. This is a devastating rule. Now, it's really interesting to read it because in the rule, everything is couched under the language of transparency and accountability. This is all about transparency and accountability. It makes it sound good, like apple pie and mom. Who's against transparency and accountability? This has nothing to do with transparency and accountability. This is all about killing anything that the president doesn't agree with. Now, we've had a year and a half now to see what this president's priorities are. But imagine a president even worse. That would give them total control over all grant funding in the United States. And all grants would be basically at the discretion of the politics of the president. You think it's dangerous if you're a researcher? Imagine you were to get a president in there who wanted to only fund research, say that had to do with homeopathy. That would be the only research that would be funded. I mean, the prospects of the impact of this is so mind-boggling. I keep going back to those young, some of the cases not so young, medical school graduates whose entire career now is going to be impact. If this rule goes forward, their careers are going to be impacted. Will they ever be able to pursue a career as an independent investigator, as a clinician investigator, a research physician? No, they won't. They'll have to do research that meets with the priorities of the president. And then I think about the impact, not just on current scientists and physicians and young grads, but I think about the impact on medical schools all across the United States. It's funny when you go to, I was just visiting my alma mater the other day, and I started there nearly 50 years ago, and it was a brand new medical school, small, one building. You go there now, and it's this sprawling complex of multiple huge buildings and centers for molecular medicine, and it's really a world-renowned medical research enterprise right now, and that all becomes under potential attack from this rule. So this is really, I call it the kill shot. It's the final shot. It's been death by 1,000 cuts. Well, now it's the final kill shot. We've seen Trump appoint people who are completely and totally unqualified, as adjudicated by qualified and led by someone who lacks qualification. We've seen that throughout now. Well, this is the final blow, the final kill shot. If this OMB rule goes in the way it is written or anything close to it, you can hang it up for the United States as a center of research, it's the end of independent research in the United States, not just in medicine, but in all areas of science. It is an incredible, you think how much worse can it get? Not much. This is when if you're in science and medicine, this is about it. You got to leave the United States. You have to go to another country if you want to pursue a career as an independent medical researcher, clinician, investigator. You really can't do it in the United States anymore under this kind of a rule. You'd have to leave the country and have a career in another country. So that's my presentation for today. By the way, it's all on LinkedIn. I've posted this on LinkedIn. I've also posted it on my Substack, Exposed. So if you have further interest in this topic, please, feel free to look at those sites as well. But it's a grim day, Nick. I hate to say it, but it's a grim day.
Well, I agree with you. It's a grim day in the United States, but you notice I live in Europe. In other words, every time I see things that happen in the U.S., I say I live in Spain. But to me, it was highly predictable that this was going to be a very challenging 4 years for the United States of America. But here's the sad part, Dr. Patmos. In the next 8 years, it could even get worse.
Yes.
Because of the financial nature of the U.S., the huge amounts of debts, unfunded Social Security, unfunded Medicare liabilities, and a bunch of clowns who are politicians pretending they have any idea what's going on. But Rick, you may have some other thoughts.
No, this is the worst possible time. Because the rate of scientific advancement is faster than ever. Mm-hmm. The amount of medical research data doubles every month, and we're shooting ourselves in both feet.
But realize a lot of research right now is being done in China, Japan, and the European Union.
In your country, your adopted country, Spain, they had a huge breakthrough in pancreatic therapy.
Right. Yeah, it's just what's really happening is the U.S. will lose its number one position in the world.
We already have.
Yeah, right. And by the way, in a lot of metrics, the U.S. has already lost it. In Spain, your life expectancy is greater than it is in the United States of America as we sit today, and our health costs are about 1/2. So, if you go look at all the metrics, you see the U.S. is slipping, and now what's happening, they're just slipping at a more accelerated rate. The only question is, when will be the big day of reckoning? My prediction will be around 2032, because that's when the Social Security Trust Fund and Medicare Trust Fund runs out of money. At that point in time, the politicians can't duck, hide, and cover, which is what they've been doing for years. They're going to be faced with they're broke, and now what are you going to do? Yeah. So, this is just one.
So there's still private money and private research going on. So, how much does hamstringing the public funding screw us up?
That's I didn't think about that, Rick, but that's why you're so smart. You think of things that nobody else would really think about. That's a very good point. This is public funding for research, and one way around it is it's just like the CDC used to make these great recommendations on vaccines, for example, through the ACIP. Well, with the takeover of the ACIP by Kennedy's unqualified people, that process moved out, and now CIDRAP, CIDRAP, an organization run privately, I think out of the University of Minnesota or someplace, is now making the guidelines and the recommendations that doctors are following. Doctors just don't even pay attention to ACIP guidelines anymore. We're going around it. So it is in an analogous way, maybe this drives some research into private funding as opposed to public funding. But public funding has been enormous. We're talking about billions of dollars of public funding that's all under threat right now. Let me just give you two graphic real world examples of the benefit of what's at stake here. I've been a doctor 45 years. I started medical school 50 years ago. When I started, pancreatic cancer was uniformly a death sentence. And on average, a person diagnosed with pancreatic cancer would live 3 months. Well, today, it's still a very bad disease. We don't have a cure for many patients. But because of the research that's been done, people with pancreatic cancer now live much longer. Many patients are cured with surgical procedures that weren't even contemplated 50 years ago. The Whipple procedure. When I first saw the Whipple procedure as a young doctor, that was a procedure that people didn't even survive. It was so complicated. Now patients get it all the time. You see patients all the time now who have survived pancreatic cancer for years. Look at breast cancer. When I started 50 years ago, a woman with metastatic breast cancer had a fatal diagnosis. They'd live 3 to 5 years. Boom, that was it. Now with these new drugs that we have, women with breast cancer and men with breast cancer are living much longer. We're seeing long-term remissions of 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So the research that's been done, it has really materially improved quality of life and changed the outlook and the outcome for so many people. And so all of that is now at risk. We've lost our standing in this whole area.
In the 70s, what you're talking about, cancer survival, 5 years was the gold standard, and 50% of cancer patients made it 5 years without a recurrence. Now it's close to 75%, and 5 years isn't the standard anymore because
it's too short.
Yeah, it's a little longer and everything. But to your point, Rick, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. My mom retired many years ago from the Golden Leaf Foundation, but maybe this is an opportunity for private foundations to take up the mantle, because one of the research institutions, because this is the Research Triangle Park, and North Carolina Central University, which is one of our HBCUs, is very proud of being part of that, and they have some very good departments. And the Golden Leaf Foundation, which Mom was the first president of, actually founded the biomedical and biotech research at North Carolina Central University by providing $21.6 million in total grants to establish what is called the Bright Building, which is Biomanufacturing Research Institute and Technology Enterprise. So she did that back in 2003 when she was the president of that particular foundation, and they definitely honored her for all the work that she was doing in that particular time. So it's part of a broader $69 million North Carolina Bio Impact Initiative, which connected academic research directly to workforce preparedness for North Carolina's biotechnology sector. So it sounds to me that what you're saying is that a lot of the more public money might be drying up, so we've got to go for more of the private sector, kind of similar to what Mom was doing back in 2003.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, but I think that we're talking about logarithmic differences in funding levels. The private sector funding level is much smaller than that. Now, of course, it could grow, and maybe that's a little ray of hope here. But the size and scope and scale of federally supported research is enormous, and all of that is at risk here.
And when funding goes private, the beneficiaries are the tech billionaire bros who, there's a bunch of junk science and maybe some legit science going on with peptides. And and so the bros who have billions of dollars to set up their own private labs, if anything comes out of that, then they're the beneficiaries, and we, the people who don't have millions and billions, get the junk remnants.
Yeah, well, you're going to be more reliant on the private industry. My classmate Stuart Miller, who I went to law school with, he actually donated when his dad died. They donated $100 million to the University of Miami, and they renamed it the Miller School of Medicine. And part of the reason they did it is because of the state taxes. It was a charitable deduction under Section 2033 of the Internal Revenue Code. So if we encourage that, and then of course we know Bill Gates has spent a lot of money on that, but Bill Gates is under unbelievable attack by the anti-vaxxers. They basically claim that he created this COVID. I mean, they're just insane. But I believe really, because my wife's family knew the Gateses, that he really, the culture up there is to give back, and Bill Gates didn't need all those billions, so he's sending it to the Gates Foundation that does use a lot for medical research. In other words, that's what's going on in some of the multi-billionaire class. But we're going to be beholden to the billionaires. I mean, that's just the way it is. In other words, in the United States of America, and Spain, they're more egalitarian. But in the US, you're going to have to be basically sucking up to either politicians or sucking up to billionaires. Well,
in this window here, all four of us are beneficiaries of, well, the Russians in 1957 put the first satellite in orbit. The U.S. freaked out. There was a 20-year push for math, science, education. And so we got educated, and the world we live in, the smartphones, the computers, the AI, that's all because we educated a couple generations of students using public funds. We gave ourselves excellent math, science education. And that is, who knows what kind of education you're getting in states like Oklahoma now. A few years ago, Oklahoma didn't even have enough money to keep public schools open 5 days a week. They went to a 4-day-a-week. So, public
but also I agree with Dr. Patmos. What's coming out of medical schools, a lot of the MD PhDs, which didn't exist years ago, they also exist in law school. There's a lot of JD PhD programs that are out there. I mean, you have to be insane because you're going another 3 more years to college. But, I mean, seriously. But some of these people are definitely dedicated research people. I mean, they're seriously into their research. To not allow them to get grants and to pursue this is really almost a crime, because they're the ones that develop the leading edge technology that we use to improve people's health. And I was always impressed, because when I met these MD PhDs when I was in Seattle, I knew a lot of them because they were chess players. And I go, wow, they're doing a lot of really great research stuff, but they do it all behind the scenes and do it very quietly. They're not the politician loudmouths that are on LinkedIn, which we have from the McFraud Foundation. The guy's a loudmouth. He's not an MD PhD. He's not even an MD, but he rambles on, he rattles on, but I don't think he has a clue what he's talking about.
The education system right now is in kind of a shambles, because super high percentages of students are using AI to do their assignments, which means they're not developing, any of the skills you'd want somebody to develop in
the analytical skills. Yeah, they're relying on AI rather than the analytical skills. But that has also been a change. And here's what's going to happen also, is that AI also did a lot of analysis on COVID to give them an indication of where they should go to do COVID vaccinations. I mean, it's just, I don't think you're going to be able to get rid of AI. We use it in our office every day. It's just good.
Okay, every year, you talked about the vaccine board. Every year, there's supposed to be a panel of scientists who used to work for the government, who take a look at wastewater, they look at the other nations of the world, and they try to predict which varieties of flu will be hitting the U.S. every fall and winter. So what happened to that panel?
Yeah, the large data analytic panels. What's happening to that? Because are
Well,
we going
Dr.
to develop a
Patmos, is
vaccine?
that panel still in business? Or
Yeah. Are we going to have a vaccine?
I don't know. I can't answer your question, Rick. I don't know. I haven't looked at that specifically, but I think about this on another level, and that is, let's say OMB, this rule is passed, and over the next year or two, research funding, public research funding is really slashed. It impacts all of these places like Triangle Park in North Carolina, there where you're referring to, Mark. It impacts research medical schools like the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine. Then you think about the downstream impacts. If those researchers leave, then that revenue stream dries up. The adverse impact it has on the communities. I remember when the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine was a brand new medical school, and as it grew, it seeded the entire economy in and around Reno, Nevada, around the University of Nevada, Reno, and the whole area just boomed with this influx of highly educated, very well compensated, highly educated professionals who flocked to that area and turned Reno from a gambling town into a major medical center. Well, that is all at risk now. I mean, what happens to all the other major medical schools that drive the economy in their local areas? That all is under threat now. So this could really cascade in a domino effect all the way through into local economies in a very adverse way.
So if for every buck, I just asked AI, the government spends on science funding, that generates between $1.50 and $3 to the national, in returns to the national economy. So
you're talking about really hurting. This goes beyond just the science and medicine. It goes right in to the economy of the communities. So all these communities that are sort of around these medical enterprises all suffer. This is just such a dumb idea.
Yeah. What'll happen is Japan and China and even the European Union will take over to be the world leaders, and medicine in the U.S. will move into the fourth place. I mean, that's what you're looking at. Or what you're looking at is this administration will be gone, in my prediction. At least they're not going to take the House and the Senate, and I don't think they're going to be around in the next couple of years. So we're going to have to see what America votes on. In the meantime, there's some people can vote with their feet, and unfortunately, we're going to be voting now with our feet because we're out of time, and World Edition is.
All right, one more statistic. China allocates $130 billion annually in direct public research and development.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Look, everybody out there needs to get used to learning Mandarin. I mean, that's just the way it is. And we'll see you next week on Medicine and Science, only on the Pod TV network. Bye-bye.